Welcome to the deep dive. We're jumping into something today that feels absolutely fundamental,
Yeah, it really does.
both for understanding the little humans in our lives
Yeah.
and, honestly, for navigating the world ourselves. We're talking about emotion regulation in children.
Mm-hmm.
And this deep dive, it's
Yeah.
built on a stack of sources you've shared with us, pulling insights from folks like Mel Robbins and her The Let Them theory, Dr. Lisa Firestone in Psychology Today, and also material for the Child Mind Institute.
And our mission really is to kind of cut through all that information to distill the key nuggets.
Right.
We want to get clear on what emotion regulation actually is, why it's such a game changer for kids' future success,
And maybe most importantly,
and how caregivers can actually help teach this vital skill, practically speaking.
one of the big ideas that kept jumping out at me as I went through these sources was, well, it genuinely surprised me a bit.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
It's this notion that emotional maturity, it isn't just something you have or you don't. It's treated like a skill, like learning to ride a bike or tie your shoes, something that takes time and practice and actual effort.
That shift in perspective is so key, isn't it? When we talk about emotion regulation, the sources define it as um, the way we understand, manage, and cope with our feelings.
Right?
It's a whole toolbox of skills, really, not just one thing. And that toolbox is like intimately linked to what we see as emotional maturity.
Right. And I was really struck by how Mel Robbins puts it, talking about the let them theory. She highlights why so many people struggle with this. She says, let me get this right.
Yeah, that quote's powerful.
Most people don't know how to process their emotions in a healthy way, much less communicate their needs in a direct and respectful fashion.
Mm-hmm.
And then to handle your emotions, you have to understand them and know how to process them in a healthy way. And the kicker, emotional maturity isn't something you're born with or that just happens. It's a skill that takes time, practice, and a desire to learn.
Exactly. What makes that so powerful is the clarity. It is not innate. It's a skill. It needs conscious learning, practice. And thinking about it that way, it fundamentally changes how we approach things.
How so?
Well, both our own emotional stuff, right? And how
Yeah.
we view kids' behavior. Instead of thinking, why can't they just control themselves? We start asking.
What skills are they missing?
Precisely. And how can we help them learn? It's a total reframe.
Okay, so if it's a skill that needs learning, that brings us straight to childhood. These early years are like absolutely critical for building that foundation.
For sure. The sources make a really compelling case for why emotion regulation is so incredibly important during this time.
So what's the core reason there?
Well, Dr. Lisa Firestone points out in Psychology Today that children are essentially processing the entire world around them.
Wow.
And their main way of doing that, of making sense of everything, is through the emotions those experiences trigger.
So feelings are like their primary data input.
In a way, yeah. Think about it. They're these tiny, capable navigators, right? But in this giant, often confusing, overwhelming world, they run into situations that bring up these huge feelings, but they just don't have the adult brain or the words yet to really grasp or explain what's happening inside.
Which is where maybe things like tantrums come in.
Exactly. The sources suggest these aren't necessarily kids being, bad. They might be the only tool a child has at that moment.
Their only way to signal distress.
Right. To express an overwhelming feeling or an unmet need. It's their current communication tool, even if it's, well, loud.
So maybe seeing a tantrum. This deep dive reframes it less as naughtiness and more as a child basically shouting, I have a feeling I don't understand or can't manage right now.
Yes. And this is where caregivers are so crucial. Both Robbins and the Child Mind Institute stuff, they emphasize that kids inherently look to the adults around them
For help.
for help navigating these big feelings, absolutely. And crucially, for guidance on how to handle them themselves over time. They need us to model it, to show them the way.
Which leads us right to the big practical question then. Okay, I get it's important, I get it's a skill, but how? How do I actually teach it?
Yes, and thankfully, the sources offer some really solid, actionable strategies, things you can actually do.
All right, let's get into those. The first one feels maybe the most intuitive, but also incredibly powerful. Model the behavior.
Totally. Kids are like little mirrors, aren't they?
Yeah.
They learn so much just by watching the adults in their lives navigate the world, and that includes navigating emotions.
So when I, as the caregiver, feel something big,
Exactly. Maybe frustration when your computer freezes, or sadness after some bad news, or just stress from a busy day.
Okay.
That moment. That's your teaching opportunity. Instead of just, stuffing it down or blowing up,
You show them the skills.
you demonstrate the skills you want them to learn. Like, take a visible deep breath. Say out loud, wow, I'm feeling really frustrated right now because this isn't working. I need to take a moment.
Or even asking for comfort.
Yes. I'm feeling sad. I could really use a hug. You're showing them healthy coping right there in real time.
That makes so much sense. You're not pretending things are perfect. You're showing them how to handle the not perfect moments.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, strategy 2. Practice when emotions aren't big.
Right. You don't want the first time a child tries out, say, deep breathing to be in the middle of a full-blown meltdown.
Yeah, that seems unlikely to work.
It's much easier to learn and practice a new skill when things are calm. So the sources suggest weaving this into everyday life, especially through play.
Through play, how does that work?
During pretend play, or maybe when you're reading a book together or just playing with toys, you can pause and ask about the character's feelings.
Oh, like that example they gave.
Yeah.
It seems like Mr. Fox is really sad. His head is hanging low and his face is pouting. Why do you think he's sad?
Precisely that. It helps kids start connecting, the outside stuff, facial expressions, body language, with the inside stuff, the feelings.
And it builds their vocabulary for emotions too.
Absolutely. It's a really low-stakes way to introduce and practice emotion words. The more words kids have for feelings, the better they can eventually tell you what's going on before it gets huge.
So practicing these little conversations when everyone's calm, it builds the pathways they need later.
Exactly. It builds those neural pathways they can tap into when things get intense.
Okay, modeling, practicing when calm. What's the third key strategy?
Create a safe space for all emotions.
All of them. Even the tricky ones like anger or fear.
Especially the tricky ones. It means making it crystal clear to your child that every single feeling they have, happy, sad, angry, scared, excited, frustrated, you name it, is okay to feel.
No good or bad feelings, just feeling.
Right. You want kids to feel comfortable experiencing their whole range of emotions without worrying about getting judged or punished.
So how does that look in practice?
Well, if they're overjoyed, share that joy. If they're scared or sad, offer comfort, validate it. Say, it looks like you're feeling really scared right now, and that's okay.
And for anger.
With anger, you help them understand why they're angry and then guide them towards expressing it in a way that doesn't hurt themselves or anyone else, rather than just saying, don't be angry.
Because you can't just switch anger off.
No. And the core idea here, coming straight from the sources, is that the more comfortable kids are simply having any kind of emotion,
the better they'll get at managing it.
Exactly. If they learn certain feelings are bad or off limits, they'll try to push them down, suppress them. And that actually makes healthy regulation much harder in the long run.
Okay, wow. So when you put it all together, understanding it's a learned skill, seeing childhood as this key learning time where feelings are communication, and then using these 3 strategies, modeling, practicing when calm, and creating that safe space for all feelings. You really see the link to adulthood, don't you?
You really do. It becomes so clear.
Absolutely. Teaching kids these foundational skills, it isn't just about, like, fewer tantrums in the supermarket, is it?
No, not at all. Though that's a nice side effect, maybe.
Right. But it's about building the actual bedrock for their future, their ability to form healthy relationships, manage stress effectively, navigate all the complexities of adult life.
It's setting them up for success, just like the sources say.
It gives them that emotional intelligence they need, right? For empathy, for resolving conflict, for being resilient.
For having genuine connections with other people later on. All of it.
So this deep dive, drawing from sources like Mel Robbins, Psychology Today, the Child Mind Institute, it really does shift how you think about it.
Definitely.
Emotion regulation isn't some, mysterious innate thing. It's a learned skill. It's vital for kids. And it's something caregivers can actively, intentionally teach.
Through that modeling, that practice, and creating that safe, accepting environment for every feeling.
Yeah, helping children develop this capacity to understand and manage their emotions. It feels like one of the most impactful investments you can make in their future.
In their well-being, their future relationships.
Absolutely. And just returning to that idea from Mel Robbins that emotional maturity takes time, practice, and a desire to learn. Here's maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. If these foundational steps, the modeling, the practice, the safe space, are what helps children build emotional maturity, how might understanding this process shed light on our own journeys as adults? Because, let's be honest, we're all still navigating, learning, and practicing emotional regulation throughout our lives, aren't we?
That's a really great point to end on. We're all still